Hey guys, it's Trisha, the left-handed stitcher. I am going to show you the process that I have developed to prepare a new project for stitching. It is quite methodical, and it's something I've found that just doing the preparations makes my stitching more enjoyable. We're going to deal with floss and fabric and pattern. Everything that I do for each project. And it pretty much goes without saying that it's not the right way, it's my way. So if you find something that I show you helpful for you, then awesome. Alright, so the project that I'm going to use an example for this is a birth sampler that I chose for my niece who's having her first child. And since she's younger, I decided that I didn't want to do one of the traditional or cutesy kind, that I wanted something a little bit more modern and edgy. And so my search ended up on Etsy, and I discovered this little pattern by Imagination Admin called Welcome Little Love. So cute and just, perfect. Perfect. And this one is for the girl. They have a version. Let me pull it up real quick to show you. In colors for boys as well. So now I'm going to switch view on the camera and we'll get started on the process. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is pattern. This particular project I am going to be doing using the digital pattern, but the majority of my projects I use a paper pattern. It's just my preference. But this one, because it's such a simple design, I think I can use digital very easily. Alright, so for the paper patterns, I take the pattern to Staples and I ask them to make a copy, a working copy, and enlarge it. And it's usually about 130% type of enlargement, depending on the different patterns. Some of them are teeny little squares to begin with, so you gotta go a little bit bigger. But just to show you just a tiny bit of the pattern. This is the original. Here's the enlarged. My goal is to make it so that the squares are about the same width as the tip of my highlighter. I find that works good for my eyes and good for marking off on the chart. And then on the back I put the colors. Now what I'm using is scrap mat board. I got a big stack of this, so this is what I use. If I have a pattern that's too big for the mat board that I have, I use foam core and I throw it on there. So, alright, now I will show you how I use the cross stitch calculator on crossstitch.com to figure out what size fabric I'm going to need. So, as you can see, as I put in the stitches, 121 by 121, I am going to use a 28 count fabric over 2 threads, so that comes out to 8 3/4 inches by 8 3/4 inches. Now you can use their margin to figure out your margin, but I have my own calculation that I like to use. So let's zoom in just a little bit here. Alright, so this is the stitches and here's the design size that is going to be. I look at the project and I decide if my normal process is going to work or if I need to do something special. Like if it's going on a scroll frame, I might add a little extra to the top. Or if I know that when I frame it, I'm going to leave a really wide margin on the sides. There's certain designs that look better that way. Then I'll add a little bit more margin to my fabric. But for most things, framing where the mat comes up close to it, or the frame itself is close to the stitching, or you're going to do a no-sew cube or a wall hanging, whatever, most things don't need more than a 2-inch margin. And I've found that by doing my usual thing that I'm going to show you, I can serve on a lot of fabric this way, because most of the time that's all you need. But you have to think ahead. If there's a possibility that you're going to finish it in such a way that you're going to need a larger margin, then factor that in at the beginning. But since I more or less know how I'm going to do this, and my normal process is going to work for this, I'll add 4.5 to each measurement, which gives me 13.25 on both sides. So this is what my fabric has to be cut to. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is talk about choosing my fabric, and then choosing colors as well. Sometimes your fabric will dictate your colors, and sometimes the colors dictate the fabric. It's a fluid situation. Since the colors are pretty simple on this one, the fabric that it showed on the website was a gray background, but I just couldn't get a hold of a good gray background. So I decided just to go, first try it with the white, and then try it with a neutral color. So the white is a 28 count Joblin that I have a bunch of it in my stash, and then the neutral color is the stuff that I get from Hobby Lobby with a coupon. It is also 28 count. Alright, so the colors that the pattern listed to use was this one, this one, this one, this one, this, and this. Alright, so I looked at the colors, and I didn't really like this orange. It just didn't seem to fit with everything. So I went and I used my floss card, and I grabbed 2 other oranges to try out. So I tried out one that was a lot more subdued, and I didn't like that one. So I put this one in there, and that one worked for me. It's not much different from the original, but it's just a little bit less day glow than that orange was. So that was a good swap for me. And then I didn't really like the cream color with it. So I pulled out a few different colors, and I ended up swapping it out for this light gray color. And that right there is what I decided to go with. So now that I have my floss colors that I wanted to do, I did a floss toss on the white and the neutral color, and I determined that I just like it better on this fabric than this fabric. It would work on either, but I think the colors pop more on this fabric. So that's what I decided to go with. And now we're going to go over to the sewing table, and I'm going to show you how I prepare that fabric. Alright, so now I'm going to cut and border my fabric. First thing I do is clean up one of the edges. just taking a little bit off the edge to make it straight. And then from that edge, I'm going to cut my length, which I need it this way. I've already marked on the mat where my measurement needs to be. So I'll line up that edge with the starting line. I'll get my ruler lined up where it needs to be. And then cut. Now you guys might notice I'm not using my weight anymore for my ruler because I got one of these guys, Omni Grip. It has a slightly sticky surface like a vinyl on one side, so it doesn't slip as nearly as bad as the old ruler did. So now this piece right here, I can use this for ornaments later on. So now I have that cut, and this edge is actually pretty straight to begin with, so I don't have to clean that up. So now I will just move my ruler to where it needs to be and cut. Right about there. And as you notice, I ironed my fabric before I cut, if that's at all possible, because it just makes it a lot easier to get accurate measurement cuts. Alright, there we go. The piece has been cut. Now what I'm going to do is add my borders. These are 3-inch strips of just bargain fabric that I have, and I just pick a side. I put right sides together and I measure it up with the edge of the fabric. And get my pins, and I throw a pin. And every 4 inches or so. And you notice I'm putting them a good distance away from the edge, that way I can just serge without having to remove pins. So make sure we're still lined up with the edge. One there. And we'll do one right here. Now one thing I'll do is I'll put one right here towards the end, because my fabric does tend to migrate right towards that end. So now that I have that added, I can trim. And it doesn't have to be exact, because that will get cut off by the serger, the extra fabric. So I just go close and do the other side. Main frame, yep. And actually, I like to work this way. I'll throw you on there, up to the edge, and then pin. And again, close. Make sure it's not angled too much. I don't want to cut a corner off. I can feel where the fabric ends, so I can make sure that I'm not going to cut any of my stitching fabric with that cut. Alright, so now we're going to go to the serger, and I'm going to serge these edges. Alright, serging is really easy. I know that my cutting blade is only about 1/4 inch away from the edge right here, so that's what I aim for. I'm trying to serge the edge without cutting too much off. Alright, so these edges are serged right here, and what I will do now is I will iron the border flat. So what I do is I open it up and just work that seam flat, like so. And I'll do the other side. By doing it this way, I make sure that the seam allowance is bent towards the outside. So now we're going to add the border on the other two sides. Alright, so to add the border to the other two sides, what we do is, again, face, right sides together, and I get it lined up with the edge of the fabric, but since I have a little extra fabric here, I don't try to line it up with that edge. Alright, so I have it there. Grab my pins. Trim that off approximately. I don't have to get it right at the edge, but just close, so you're not wasting a lot of fabric. And now, oops, sorry, bumping the camera. Do the other side. Yeah, the first time I did this to one of my pieces, one of my projects, one of these strips got turned the wrong way. So yeah, it doesn't really matter, but it's just an aesthetic thing and an OCD type of a thing. Alright, so now pin these up. This one up. This one. There we go. Oh, one little piece. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to serge these two ends. Sides on. Alright, now the other two sides are serged and the pins are removed. So now I'm going to do the same thing of opening up the seam. Like so. And do the other side. Alright, so now what I'll do is I will go to my serger and I'll run a serge line all the way around the perimeter. Because this is a woven fabric, it will fray. Alright, so I'm going to serge all the way around my fabric. And now my fourth side. Now I'm going to go to each of the corners and clip off the excess thread. And the best way to do that is to kind of pull it so that it locks together and then trim. Alright, so now what I'll do is I'll just take it back to the ironing board and iron these seams and the whole piece one more time. Alright, so now that my fabric is edged and serged, last thing I do for this part of the process is I'll pick which side I want to be the top of my fabric, and then in the border area I write the name of the project. So this one is going to be Welcome Little Love. Alright, so that's it. Alright, so adding the extra fabric to my stitching fabric, I started doing that a little while ago. I needed to do it one time because I was doing a kit and the kit only left me with barely an inch of margin, and since I use a Q-snap, I need about 3 to 4 inches of margin in order to stitch. And so I added some fabric panel to the sides, and that solved that problem. And then when I was preparing a lot of my mini stitch-alongs, I realized that if I did that for all of my projects, that I would conserve fabric, because I had a piece of fabric. If I did it my old way, I would use that whole piece of fabric for that one stitch. But if I did it my new way, by adding the border fabric around, I would use half that fabric and then I'd have the other half for another project. So I've been doing that to every project since. It's time to prep my floss, and if you want to see how I go from this to this, watch my video on my floss organization system and you'll see it. So I have all the floss that I need in the envelopes ready to go. The video, I'll link it below so that if you haven't seen it, it'll be easy for you to find. One other thing that I'm going to show you is I have this little book over by my stash, and I write in it all the projects that I'm doing and the colors that I pulled and where I pulled it from. So S is from stash and GB is from the green box where the envelopes are kept. Now you see this one says GB and S. That's because when I found the envelope, it just didn't have enough. It was this color. It didn't have enough in it for the project, so I pulled another skein from my stash and I processed it into the envelope. So now they're ready to go. Alright, so now that I have my fabric cut and edged and I have my floss prepared, my pattern is digital, so I have that. If it was paper, I would have it mounted to the mat board and enlarged. So the next thing that I need to do is I need to grid. I'll grid this fabric. I'm not going to show you that in this video. That is going to be its own video, because there's a lot that I want to put in that. So I'm going to go and I'm going to grid this, and then I will show you the rest of my process. Alright, so gridding is done on my Welcome Little Love project. This took me about 2.5 days. Project this size I could get done in a day, but then that would mean I'd have to ignore my family, so I can't do that. Alright, so now, since she is gridded and ready, we're going to talk about my frame. So here's the frame I'm going to use. Q-snap. And let me undo the sides real quick to show you my configuration. This is my favorite size to work with. And what it is, it's an 8x8 frame. So you can see on these sides it has the like 1/8 of an inch connector width piece. On 2 of the sides I swapped that out for 3, but like a 2.5 inch piece. Or not quite sure how wide that is. And let me grab my ruler and check. Alright, so it is 1.5, nope, that's, 1 3/4 inches is how wide that piece is. And so by swapping those 2 short pieces out with 2 longer pieces, I end up with an 8 by 9.5 inch frame, which I like, because sometimes the 8 inch it's just not wide enough for the piece I'm working on. And so I decided to do this one day, and it works so well for me. It's my favorite now. Alright, so now I have my frame, and I already have a grime guard made for my favorite size. We're going to get it set up. Now, because I have written the title of the project at the top left-hand corner, that helps me orient my fabric. And also, I know that my center stitch is going to be within this block towards the lower left-hand corner. So we're going to place it where I want it, roughly about there. And then we're going to start. And oops, one thing I forgot. It's in my box here. Since I am going to be moving this frame around on this project, I have already cut my little felt pieces to the sizes that I need. And I will just start adding them now, even though they're not absolutely necessary at this point, so that I don't have to go find them when I get ready, when I do need them. So throwing it on there. And to be honest, these are the clamps that came with the 8 inch. This size is just a little bit short for my new 9.5 inch width. I have clamps that are the right size for this. I ordered them from Yarn Tree. They're an odd size because they're for older frames, but they're currently being used on other projects, so I'm having to order more. But until then, this clamp right here will work. It's not optimal, but it works just fine. Alright, so, and I can already see that I'm just a little bit crooked, so off that goes. Start again, position, get the first one on, like so, and then a little bit of a tension, roll it around so you can get the opposing side added. And there's my felt piece. Lay that on there, and of course I use my body for some leverage. Sorry, it's just a little bit out of frame. There we go. And then I work on the other two sides. A little bit of tension. Get my felt piece for it. And on goes my clamp. Like so. Alright, last side. And on goes the clamp. Alright, so I got my dollar store hair clips that'll help me curl the fabric. And what I'll do is I will start this way. Roll it. Roll it. And there we go. Place a clamp on there. And then do the next side. Rolling. 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 And then bring it around. Clamp on. And then, like you see, these sides are real small, so those will go on with no problem. So I'm going to start with this corner and this side when I put the Q-snap on. So again, the corner, I start twisting it and I tuck it. So then I can take this clamp off and start putting on the grime guard. On there. Alright, so I'll put it on this corner temporarily so I can get it over this way. So now this corner I'm going to twist and roll and tuck, and then Q-snap grime guard goes up over it. And then this corner, I get this set around there and this one in place, and then I twist and roll like so. And I go back to this side and see if I can fix that side without taking it off. If I have to, I'll take this corner off and work it like that. So, but I can easily tuck it from this without taking it off. Alright, a few adjustments. And there we have it. My project is ready on my Q-snap. Now, the next thing is, grab it out of I need to choose my needle minder from my little collection, and I think I'm gonna go with this one today. Alright, and I always like to put my needle minder in the upper right hand corner. Remember, I'm a lefty, so that's where I tend to put my needle all the time. And then I gotta get my needle. So this is the little container I keep my needles in. So I go in, and this is 28 count, so I grab a 24 size needle. On the needle minder it goes. Put my package back in my needle case. And then the other things that I need to start stitching, of course, I have my threads ready. I have my cheaters, my 3x magnification glasses that I get from Walmart. I get this and this right here. I have my scissors. I have my Thread Heaven in the little case. That is such a good idea. I love it. I have one side for dark, marked with D, and one side for light floss, light colored floss, marked with an L. I'm currently looking to find the little mini ones of these, which will be great to put in my travel kits. But there it is. And normally I would need my highlighters if I was doing a paper copy, but since this is a digital, I don't need these this time. So, and the last thing is my extra light source. This little guy, the Mighty Bright. I ordered this one from 123 Stitch, but the power cord didn't come with it. And the power cord's not available on 123 Stitch. I had to order this from Amazon, but it was easy to find. I just had to do a keyword search for it, and so now I don't have to worry about this thing eating batteries. I actually have two of these. One stays at my stitchy spot on the couch. It's actually tucked between the cushions to my right side, so it stays there and it's over my shoulder. And so I turn it on whenever I need it. This one stays with the kitchen table nearby because I use it when I'm stitching on the Millennium frame, and I use it when I'm gridding as well. And as you can see, this one has a really long cord, so that one gets used quite often. Alright, so that's it. I'm ready to start stitching on this super cute little project. And I hope that by showing you my process has helped you in some way. If you have any questions, please just let me know. And if I have the answer to it, I will certainly help you. So, you guys have a great day, happy stitching, and we'll see you next time.